So since Stage is a real-time visualization and rendering engine, we want people to understand that part of what we're trying to help with Stage is to make the thought of rendering or the process of rendering secondary to the visualization. For example, a lot of times in the production process, you're thinking about the product and you're like, okay, I want to showcase this, but I need to do it by this date, so I'm going to have to start rendering 2 or 3 days ahead of time because I'm going to have turntables, I'm going to have multiple colorways, those kinds of things. We want Stage to relieve you of that and make it so that rendering is happening live in the viewport, and I could walk into a meeting and showcase this, and we could talk about it and change lighting and scenarios and scenes and animation and all of that kind of stuff on the fly in real time live. That's really what the goal of Stage is to be a live real-time viewer and showcasing tool to keep you or to help you not have to render so much. But we do know that everybody needs to render. You need to render stills, you need to render animations, you need to render turntables, you need to render these things and deliver JPEGs or PNGs or MP4s or whatever it is. And so we enable that as well. So I want to talk about rendering here. Now, remember, rendering in Stage is different than rendering in a traditional ray-traced render engine. In Stage, it's using the video card to do what's called real-time ray tracing. So it's doing some slight approximations, but with very accurate results, which makes it much faster. So when you're talking about rendering, we can render in a much faster manner than you would if you were rendering in something like Keyshot or V-Ray. Even though these GPU renderers are very rapid, they don't do it in real time. And so what we're trying to help with is for the designer or whoever's using Stage to be able to literally render in real time. And then if you need to export that goes almost just as fast. So I want to talk about rendering and show you rendering here. So if you remember, we had an animation and we also had some camera presets. And that meant that we could go back to, let's say, this preset, and I go back and I pick it, and I go to leg bottom, and there it is right there. Okay. But I also had some animations. So if I go to the animation tab and open up this one, and then hit play, here's my cool hero shot. Or if I go to this one and I go to this one, my cool animation, I play this and it's a turntable, right? So what I want to talk about now is how do I then render these or share these with somebody else? The quick and easy way to do that is right here in Stage. And so what we can do is if you're in at any point, even if I'm not in an animation, at any point I can render this image super fast. So I could come in here, I could place it exactly how I want. I could maybe change the scene to this runway like this, and then maybe I want the lighting to be like this, warm, cool lighting like this, okay? Now all I have to do is just go to here, render, still, pick my resolution. Do I want an alpha channel and do I want it to auto frame? And if not, then I'm just going to go right here and I'm going to say local and I'm going to say render. And takes just a second, and boom, that render is done. Okay, so that's how fast this works, and that's how fast these renders go. So you can just sit there to your heart's content, zoom in, frame it however you want. Maybe this is the view I want too, and I can come in and say render, do it again, render, takes just a second, and there's my render, and it's done. Okay, now if I said I'm going to do it like this, and then I'm going to go into render, and on that same one I'm going to check alpha mask. Now I can go in and say render, and it renders that like that with no background, but an alpha render. And let me open up this so you can see it. So you can see this, okay? So I've got one with a background, one with an alpha channel, and then that other one that I just created. Now, if I want to do one that has auto fit or auto frame, what it's going to do is I'm going to hit render, and did you see that? It's going to auto frame it so that the framing of that image fits the entire thing. And so now I've got this right here that I can look at with an alpha channel. It's lit and it's all framed in the image. So very quickly I can just render really fast and change views and do all kinds of things. I can also do that with animations. So let's say I wanted to, I come into this animation. I'm going to go back to this my cool animation right here. And I'm just going to say edit so I can see this. And then I hit play. It's going to play this turntable, right? Now, what I'm going to do is hit view, and I'm going to hit set, and then I'm also going to hit set right here because I noticed that there was a problem. There was the final frame had moved just slightly. And so I'm going to start right here. I'm going to say set, and then I'm going to say view that one. And then instead of saying set there, I'm just going to come in here and say 360 and say set. Okay. So now I've fixed that animation, right? And there's that turntable. Okay. So now what I want to do is come in here and render. So what I'm going to do is come over here. I'm actually going to change the lighting to, let's do like this My Lights that we set up. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go to this render movie, and it takes me to the render dialog for movie. And I can choose 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames a second, and then I'm going to call it turntable, right? And I'm just going to do it locally and click render. And now what you'll see is you'll see it starting to render that turntable, and look how fast this goes. Now, keep in mind that I'm rendering while I'm screen recording, but it's still going that fast. And so that fast, I'm rendering smooth or ray trace lighting, ray trace shadows, bounce lighting, all of the camera effects that we have turned on. Anything that's there, I'm rendering it that fast. I'm rendering 600 frames in this amount of time. So within 30 seconds, I've got a full HD turntable that's ray traced and ready to go, and that's how fast it goes. And so rendering in Stage is incredibly fast and efficient. And so that's how quick it is to render a movie. Let's create another animation really quick. I'm just going to say create new, and we'll call it Cool Hero. It would be, spell it right, Hero 2. Okay, I'm going to make it like 8 seconds long. We're going to start right here like this. So we're going to say set, and then we're going to end up with it like right here. Actually, we'll turn so it's on this side like that, and I say set. So now I've got this animation where I'm pulling back and I'm rotating at the same time, and all I have to do is click render, resolution. We'll call this one, whoops, nope, we'll call it Cool Hero 2. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit render. Okay, that takes just a second, loads up, and you'll see it starts to crank on that. So it's showing how long it's going to take, and it's probably going to be about 30 seconds to do this. Now remember, this is 480 frames that has depth of field and camera effects and bounced lighting and ray traced shadows and ray traced translucency and global illumination all going at the same time. And this is how quickly I can do this. And typically, if I'm going to do this in another package or another render system, I'm going to have to walk away from it, go get lunch, maybe even send it overnight. And I just don't want to have to do that. So that's the beauty of rendering in Stage. Okay, so now I want to talk about batch rendering. Batch rendering is a feature that allows you to set up multiple renders and then have them all go at the same time. And this is available to our small business and enterprise clients. And it happens to be in the render tab, and it's right here in batch. And what you'll notice here is I can create a job, so I could just hit the plus button. I could name it, so like my cool render. Oops. Right? And I can say what it is. Is it a still or a movie? We'll leave it as a still. And then we'll pick the resolution that we want. We'll pick if we want alpha, mask, and auto framing. The scene, we'll pick current, but we could pick any of the scenes. Lighting, we'll pick the current one, but we could change the lighting in between. And then the view preset, let's go all the way down to leg bottom. Or let's do it that. Yeah, let's do leg bottom. There we go. And then the output file, we just pick where we want it to go, and we'll call it, sure, call it test. There we go. And that's all I have to do. Okay. Now I set up the front, back, left, right, and 3/4, and these are all set up so that they use the camera preset that is the same as the title. So this one uses back, etc. right there. So all I really have to do, now that I've all set it up, is I pick the ones that I want. These other ones I set up for shoes. And I can just pick that cool render, and then I can just say go. So I can say local, and I can click render. Okay. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when I rendered those, it rendered cut off like this, right there. Okay. And that's because what I did is I changed, if I come to the camera view, right, I have a different resolution than my 1:1. So if I go to 1:1, I would see it. But because I had the resolution with this set, it cropped to that aspect ratio. So what I just need to make sure and do is click off. And now when I come back into that render folder and I look at those renders, see how they're cut off like this? And this is something that you need to be aware of when you're rendering. Okay, I'm going to just delete all of these. So I'm going to select all these ones that were wrong, delete them. Okay, and I'll do this one too, just get rid of it. So I just have those. And then what I'm going to do is make sure that this aspect ratio is off. Okay, and now when I go back to my batch render system and I have those checked and I say go, now it's rendering the whole thing, because now it knows, like, I'm not going to crop it to the aspect ratio view. I'm going to give you the whole thing based on the render settings. So now if I look at these objects or these images, they're rendered in full. See that? So that's one thing to be aware of, that if you go through that and you render it and you notice it that it's cropped, you need to make sure that your aspect ratio is off in the viewport. Okay? So batch rendering allows us to do a lot of things very rapidly, and that means that you can set this up. I could import a new model, and then I could just go to the next batch or the next render session, and then just render again, render again, render again, and it goes much faster that way. So once again, batch rendering is available to all of our enterprise and small business customers, and will allow you to automate a lot of your rendering tasks.